What happens when one of country music's most respected icons walks into what should be a friendly morning show interview, only to find herself in the middle of an ambush she never saw coming? The tension in Studio 1A was so thick you could cut it with a knife. And what started as pleasantries quickly devolved into one of the most uncomfortable moments in morning television history. Before we get into exactly what went down between Reba McEntire and Jenna Bush Hager, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us what you think about celebrity interviews gone wrong. Trust me, you're going to want to stay for this entire story because what happened next shocked everyone in that studio. It was supposed to be a simple promotional appearance. Reba McEntire, the queen of country music herself, had a new album dropping, and the Today Show seemed like the perfect platform to reach her fans. She'd been on the show countless times before, always charming, always gracious, always the consummate professional. But this time, something was different from the moment she walked onto that set. Jenna Bush Hager greeted Reba with her usual bright smile. But there was something in her eyes that suggested this wasn't going to be the typical softball interview. The cameras started rolling, and Jenna opened with what seemed like an innocent enough question. "Reba, it's so wonderful to have you here," Jenna began, her voice dripping with that practiced morning show enthusiasm. "You've been in this industry for over 4 decades now. That's an incredible run. But I have to ask, and I think our viewers are curious about this too, do you ever feel like your sound is a little well-dated for today's country music landscape?" The smile on Reba's face didn't falter, but anyone watching closely could see her jaw tighten just slightly. She leaned back in her chair, taking a measured breath before responding. "Dated?" Reba repeated, her southern accent somehow becoming more pronounced. "Well, Jenna, I suppose that depends on what you consider dated. If you're asking whether I chase every trend that comes along, then no, I don't. I've always believed in staying true to who I am as an artist. That's what my fans love about me." Jenna nodded, but her expression suggested she wasn't satisfied with that answer. She glanced down at her notes, a move that felt deliberate, almost theatrical. Of course, Jenna said, looking back up with that same bright smile that was starting to feel less genuine by the second. "But you have to admit, when you look at the charts today, it's artists like Morgan Wallen, Luke Combs, even crossover acts like Post Malone who are dominating. Don't you ever feel like maybe it's time to evolve your sound to stay relevant?" There it was. The word relevant hung in the air between them like a challenge. Reba's publicity team, standing just off camera, exchanged worried glances. This wasn't what they'd been promised. This was supposed to be about the new album, about celebrating a legendary career, not questioning whether that career still mattered. Reba's smile had completely disappeared now. She set down the coffee mug she'd been holding, placing it carefully on the small table beside her chair. When she spoke, her voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. "Jenna, let me ask you something," Reba said, leaning forward slightly. "How long have you been hosting morning television? A few years now, is that right?" Jenna looked momentarily caught off guard by the question. "Well, yes, I've been with Today for quite some time now, and before that, I was right, Reba interrupted, gently but firmly. "So you know a thing or two about staying power in this business. You know what it takes to connect with an audience day after day, year after year? Now imagine someone asked you if your interviewing style was dated, if maybe you needed to be more like the younger hosts to stay relevant. How would that make you feel?" The other co-hosts, sitting nearby, shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This had stopped being an interview and had become something else entirely. Jenna's cheeks flushed slightly, but she tried to maintain her composure. "I think that's a fair question that anyone in the public eye should be prepared to answer," Jenna replied, her voice taking on a slightly defensive edge. "We're all subject to criticism and evolution in our careers." "Absolutely," Reba agreed, nodding slowly, "but there's a difference between evolution and abandoning everything that made you who you are in the first place. I've sold over 75 million records. I've won every award there is to win in country music. I've acted, I've produced, I've built businesses. And I've done all of that by being authentically myself, not by trying to sound like whoever happens to be hot this week." Jenna opened her mouth to respond, but Reba wasn't finished. "You know what the difference is between an artist with longevity and a flash in the pan?" Reba continued, her voice growing more passionate. "An artist with longevity knows who they are. They have a core identity that their fans can count on. Sure, you can incorporate new sounds, new production techniques, but if you lose yourself in the process, what's the point? I'd rather be dated and authentic than trendy and fake. The tension in the studio was palpable now. Crew members had stopped what they were doing, everyone's attention fixed on what was unfolding. Jenna clearly hadn't expected Reba to push back this hard, and she was scrambling to regain control of the interview. "I don't think anyone is suggesting you're fake, Reba," Jenna said, trying to inject some warmth back into her voice. "I'm just trying to have an honest conversation about the challenges of maintaining a career in an industry that changes as rapidly as music does." "An honest conversation," Reba repeated, a slight edge of sarcasm creeping into her tone. "Is that what we're calling this? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels more like you're trying to provoke me into saying something controversial, for ratings." Jenna's eyes widened. We would never—" "Wouldn't you, though?" Reba interrupted. "I've been doing interviews for over 40 years, Jenna. I know when someone is trying to get a rise out of me. I know when questions are designed to make me look defensive or out of touch. So let's cut through it, shall we? What is it you really want to ask me?" The studio had gone completely silent except for the hum of the cameras. Even the usually bustling crew seemed frozen, watching this confrontation unfold. Jenna took a deep breath, and when she spoke again, her voice had lost some of its practiced television polish. "Fine," Jenna said, setting down her own notes. "Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Your last 3 albums haven't performed as well commercially as your earlier work. Streaming numbers show that younger audiences aren't connecting with your music the way previous generations did. At what point do you acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, the industry has moved past you?" There it was. The real question, the accusation that had been lurking beneath all the others, that Reba McEntire, legend or not, was no longer relevant to modern country music. The implication hung in the air, waiting for Reba's response. For a long moment, Reba just stared at Jenna. Not with anger, not with hurt, but with something more unsettling. A kind of calm calculation. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter than before, but somehow more powerful because of it. "You want to talk about the industry moving past me?" Reba said slowly. Deliberately. "Let me tell you something about this industry, Jenna. I was selling out arenas when most of today's country stars were still in diapers. I've weathered every trend, every shift, every prediction of my demise. And you know what? I'm still here. I'm still making music. I'm still connecting with millions of fans who don't give a damn about streaming numbers or whatever arbitrary metric you're using to measure success this week." Jenna tried to interject. "I'm not trying to diminish your accomplishments." "Then stop diminishing them." Reba cut her off, her voice sharp now. "Every question you've asked today has been designed to make me seem like a relic, like someone clinging to past glory. But here's what you're missing. Success isn't just about being the #1 song on Spotify. It's about longevity. It's about respect. It's about building something that lasts beyond whatever is hot this minute." "But the numbers don't lie," Jenna countered, her own frustration starting to show. "Your album sales have declined. That's just a fact. Album sales have declined for everyone except a handful of artists," Reba shot back. "The entire music industry has changed. Physical sales are practically extinct. Streaming has changed how people consume music. But you know what hasn't changed? The fact that I can still sell out a tour. The fact that when I announce concert dates, they sell out in minutes. The fact that 3 generations of fans come to see me perform. You want to talk numbers? Let's talk about the numbers that actually matter." Jenna shifted in her seat, clearly uncomfortable with how this interview had spiraled. She glanced toward her producers off camera, perhaps looking for guidance. But they seemed just as uncertain about how to proceed. "Look, Reba," Jenna said, trying a different approach, her tone softening slightly. "I think you're misunderstanding what I'm trying to get at here. This isn't personal. We're just having a discussion about the realities of the music business." "Oh, it feels pretty personal from where I'm sitting," Reba replied, not giving an inch. "You invited me here under the pretense of promoting my new album. Instead, you've spent the entire time questioning whether I even belong in the conversation anymore. So forgive me if I'm not buying the whole 'this isn't personal' line." The atmosphere had shifted from uncomfortable to genuinely hostile. Other hosts who'd been sitting nearby had quietly excused themselves, sensing that this interview was going somewhere they didn't want to be associated with. The camera operators kept filming because what else could they do? This was live television, and walking away wasn't an option.